So who remembers what we talked about last week? Falesa, would you mind sharing? Yeah, I'm just teasing her. She wasn't here, so sad. But yeah, who remembers what we talked about? Just the general theme of what we discussed last week. It's good when I hear this because, yeah. No. Not if you're standing. In one word.
Identity mirrors.
Identity mirrors two words. That's even better. Anything else? Value. Okay.
Yeah, you forgot the astronomy mirror.
The telescope?
It has
Yeah. No one remembers the gold standard. Yeah, that's what I was looking for because that was a bit of the meat of what we were talking about. So I'm glad that we have a few people who can share what we talked about last week. If you separate some time and ask them, I think it will be highly beneficial. So we've been talking about identity. And I think we made some interesting discoveries last week concerning identity, okay? So I'll start by the definition, and then we're going to go into some of the things. I prepared today such that it would be short, okay? So, guys, believe in me, okay? Personal identity. I'm just going to read the definitions for some of us who are not here because I'd say this, many people would define identity as what it says in the first paragraph, okay? The personal identity refers to the self-concept that an individual forms around their own uniqueness and personal traits. So this could include aspects of their personality, life experiences, memories, values, beliefs, and choices, correct? Like, it's something or a composition of elements that make you who you are uniquely. That's what people would call identity. But last week, we dug a bit deeper to see that even before you had the memories and the experiences and the titles and the things that you think make you who you are, even at birth, you still had an identity, okay? And so then we went a bit deeper, especially in the etymology of the word identity, to see that identity does not only mean the uniqueness of a thing, but also the quality of a thing being similar to something else, okay? Which is quite interesting because it sounds to be the opposite of what identity means, but the session last week helped us to understand that no one has identity in and of themselves. And that identity is not something that you achieve, but it's something that is revealed to you and eventually you receive it. You understand what I'm saying? So you don't work for your identity. Your identity is something that's given to you. You understand? And so, the word identity comes from the Latin word identitas, okay, which means sameness, okay, and it is derived from idem, which means the same, and the suffix tas, which indicates a state or condition. So the concept of identity originally referred to the quality of being the same or the condition of being identical to something or someone else. And then, yeah, like, it might sound confusing, but I would recommend that you watch last week's teaching because it will kind of fill those gaps. Because we said that your identity comes from somewhere. You understand? That there is a source to who you are. There is where you derive your sense of self, and it's not from yourself. Do you understand? Yes, through your life experiences, your memories, the relationships that you build, there are components that add to your identity. But at the very core of who you are actually similar to something or to someone. Okay? And we made allusions between the monetary system, the gold standard, how that currency, the 20 euros or the 100 euros you may have in your pocket, okay, in itself, it's worth nothing, okay? But in the gold standard, that monetary system, that currency represented something in gold, right? And so the currency found its identity based on its backing, which was gold. And so with us, we might not look, or we might have things that seem to threaten our identity, but our identity does not come from who we are. It comes from something bigger, and that's God. That we are backed up by God, and therefore we derive our identity in the fact that we are made in the image and likeness of him, just as money is backed up by gold, and it has value because there is gold. Do you understand? That system doesn't exist anymore, but it was a good illustration for us to see that the fact that we gain our identity from something bigger than ourselves. Okay? Are we together? That was a summary. So let's go next. Because today, as much as last week we were trying to understand what identity is, and we kind of focused on looking at the concept of identity just in itself, like what is identity? This week, it's a bit interesting because I want us to answer the question, not who am I, but where am I? Okay? Why am I asking this question? Because a lot of times, many times, we feel like we've lost the sense of self. Okay? Have you ever had someone saying, I'm going to find myself? Right? What do you think that means?
That means that it's out there somewhere. They have to go.
Okay.
Reconnect back with themselves.
What?
To reconnect back with themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay, reconnect back to themselves.
Would
Okay.
you consider the answer?
Yeah.
And Google myself.
To go. Shouldn't have fallen for that one.
To reclaim parts of yourself.
I like that. To reclaim parts of yourself. Okay. To find yourself. Don't you think then it implies that at some point you may have lost yourself? And are you familiar, either on a personal level or ideological, with the idea of losing yourself? Have you ever felt like you've lost yourself? You understand? What is that? And what impact does that have on your identity? This is what I want us to focus on today. Okay? Where are you? Where are you? As we're trying to answer the question of who are you? So, yeah, life has this ability to throw things at us, okay, that change our outlook. You understand that we can start off life full of energy, full of hope, full of joy, but then, in the passage of time and experiences, we kind of lose a little bit of that. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, right? Like maybe, I don't know. It depends on what reference point you have. But, usually as you advance in age, you look at, at this point in your life, you're doing better. So you're like, what happened to me? Why did I change? Why did I become this way? Why am I not as loving, as caring as I was? Do you understand? Have you ever asked yourself these questions? Be honest. Be honest. Don't lift up your hand. Just be honest, okay? Just be honest, okay? And these things are not strange. Sometimes we go through seasons in our lives that cause us to question, who are we? And sometimes we even feel like we've lost that sense of self, okay? And maybe we don't dream as much as we used to dream before. Maybe, we've become a bit more resigned. Maybe we've become a bit more different. Our personality has changed a bit, not because we intended it to be that way, but because things happened and we felt, okay, for me to survive in this life, I need to change a few things about myself. And so we adapt other things, and not necessarily bad, but we change, you understand? And sometimes we're not able to recognize ourselves if you look at yourself now and maybe a few years ago. You're like, what happened to me? I was so happy, we say, And that's why, that verse that we read, Ecclesiastes 7:10, it says, do not say things like, why were the old days better than these? Because often when we're making these statements, we are in a place of despair and hopelessness, okay? Feeling like, we've hit a dead end, okay? So there is this feeling called, I've lost myself and I don't know who I am anymore. And it comes usually when we have experienced difficult moments, okay? Sometimes you go through breakups and it kills something in you, okay? Sometimes you lose a job and it kills another part of you. Sometimes you lose a family member and it kills something in you. Sometimes you just go through things with the passage of time and it's like it's chipping away every day. And you get to a point and you realize, man, like, I'm not the same person that I used to be a few years ago. You understand? Those are just examples. I mean, there are many other things that could happen. But it's as if life takes us through experiences that try to rob us of our own selves. Hallelujah? Okay? Are we together? And the sad part is that even sometimes we take this to be the natural course of life. And we would say things like, such is life, or it is what it is, or it happens, you know. And usually when we're making these statements, we are basically communicating that, you know, there's nothing I can do about it, you know. It's happened to many people. I'm no different. Life hits you, and yeah, like, what can you do, right? And you know, the sad thing is some of these things are not even your fault, okay? Some are. Both still have the same effect of taking away from who you are, because some mistakes we make and we live with that regret, and it kills a certain part of us. We fear now to do certain things because maybe we're afraid we will make the same mistake. But sometimes other people do things to us, and it kills something in us, okay? And in that process, one event after another event after another event, you feel like you're losing yourself. You feel like you don't know who you are anymore, especially in contrast to who you thought you are. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
I'll tell you this though. It's not God's intention or design that we would start life on a high and then end on a low. It's not how it's meant to be, is what I'm trying to tell you. That's not the path of life, that you should start off better and finish off worse. Do you understand? Although many have accepted this to be true, it's not actually how things ought to be. Do you understand? It's not that you're supposed to start off life with big dreams, and as you grow older, you know, the light diminishes and you keep settling for less until it's your time to leave the world. You know, there's this joke that we used to tell about how when we started school, and you know, you're asked, okay, what do you want to be? You stand up and say, I want to be an engineer, I want to be an aerospace, whatever. I want to, you know, with all these big dreams. But as you advance through school, okay, well, by the time you're getting to high school, okay, you've changed, you know, you've adjusted a bit. Maybe I want to start my own business. You keep making the goals simpler, you know, until the point where by the time you're done with school, you know, it's like anything works, you know, so long as I have something to do, give me that. And this kind of speaks to this, that, you know, we allow life to dictate who we are, and we allow life to shape us to the extent where we feel like we have no control anymore. And in that process, we lose ourselves. We don't know what we like and what we don't like anymore. We don't know where we want to go. We don't know what we want to ask, or we don't have any dreams. We don't have any ambitions. We've just resigned to life, and we allow things to happen. Okay? And these are telltale signs of someone who's in the process of losing themselves. And the funny thing is, even those people who quit their jobs and pack their bags and say, I'm going out there to find themselves, sometimes they come back in the same or worse situation, because yourself is not out there. Yourself is in here. Do you understand? The identity that you have is not with someone else, or is not hidden in some experience. Your identity has always been with you and will always be with you, but sometimes we can lose touch with who we are and who we were made to be. Okay? Where are we? I don't even... Yeah. So, yeah, let's continue. Let's continue to the next section. Yeah. I've already spoken about this next section. Yeah. So, there are some important questions that we must answer, and I'm going to read for you a story from the scriptures that's very interesting, very pivotal. This is one story that every time I read, I gain something new, because I find it so crucial in the understanding of humanity, why we're here, why we do the things that we do. And I was even tempted to speak on a certain subject, but I felt maybe it may be a bit too soon. Maybe we can touch on it next time or next week. The title would be The Greatest Lie Ever Told. It's a very interesting one. But it's not that. Still based on the same story, kind of. But let's look at what it says here. The main point is really from here, but just to give you context and for you to understand where we're going, I thought maybe to put it from the top. And I'm going to read. I'm sorry if you can't see this section. I'll read it out for you. It's just one line. It says this: Now the serpent was more subtle and crafty than any living creature of the field which the Lord God had made. And he, in bracket Satan, said to the woman, can it really be that God has said, you shall not eat from every tree of the garden? Now, if you read the previous chapter, it talks about the creation of the Garden of Eden and how everything was created. And you see, this is the very interesting thing. To show you how important you are, even in the eyes of God, everything was created for you. Even in the order of creation, we were made last, and everything was made first so that it can be there to serve us. Do you understand? So, the second chapter of this book tells us about how all this transpired, and there were instructions given about 2 trees. Now, these trees, can look at them literally, but also they have a spiritual significance, okay? Which I may not be at liberty to go into today because it will take us a long time. And the question we're trying to answer is, where are you, okay? So we will tackle that at some point in the future. But there is a garden, and there's 2 people in the garden, and something's about to happen, okay? It says, you shall not eat from every tree of the garden. And the woman said to the serpent, listen, so it says here, can it really be that God said? So if you really investigating the text, you'll see that this creature is asking questions that that promote doubt in the mind of the person who's being told. Can it be that God really said? Okay, similar questions to, do you really think you're going to make it? Do you really think you stand a chance? Do you really think they're going to pick you? What effect does that have on the person who's hearing? What does it create in them? Doubt. So words are powerful, right? It really matters what you listen to. You cannot just say, oh, I listen to anything and I'm fine. No. Your subconscious, which participates a lot in the decisions that you make. In fact, they say every decision that you make, and if you're asked why, you say you don't know. It's your subconscious that made that decision. Because there's no such thing as you don't know. You chose what you chose for a reason. You just may not be conscious about it. Right? So, it says here that, and the woman said to the serpent, we may eat the fruit. Did God really say this? It says, you shall not eat from everything in the garden. And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat from the fruit, from the trees of the garden, except from the tree which is in the middle of the garden. So she says what she knows. Like, yeah, we can eat from, except this one. Okay, so she's aware of the conditions. And it says here, God has said, you shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. Speaking to the serpent here. And in verse 4 it says, but the serpent said to the woman, you shall not surely die. So even though the woman was convinced and was sure of what she had been told, this voice of doubt came and said to her, did it really happen this way? Did God really say this? And then in the 4th verse, you hear the serpent speaking again and saying, you shall not surely die. So he's saying, disregard what you heard. I'm telling you, nothing will happen. And in verse 5, it says, for God knows that in that very day that you eat of it, he says, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing the difference between good and evil and blessing and calamity. Okay? So the serpent goes on to say, listen, you won't die. In fact, if you eat of it, what will happen is that you will become, it says your eyes will be open and you will become like God, knowing good and evil, blessing and calamity. Now, that's a very rich statement. But if I was to ask you what we've said many times before, what does it say? If the serpent is telling the woman, eat of this and you will become like God, what is it telling the woman?
You're not like God.
That you're not like God. Correct? But what does it say in Genesis chapter 1:26? It says you are created in the image and likeness of God. So this voice of doubt comes and tells you that, hey, if you do this, you will become like God. So if you're obliged to that action, it means that you're confirming that you're not actually like God, even though that is your true nature and identity. Do you see where the deception came in. That it was such a complicated, well thought out plan of deception that if you are not careful, anyone would have fallen for it. Okay? I don't have the time to really expand, but you see that. Literally one chapter ago, God declares and says, let us make man in the image and likeness of God. And says, so in the image of God, he created them. So then we see another character introduced in this chapter, and this character is saying, if you do this, then you will become like God. So what should she have actually said?
I am like God.
Yeah, I said, I don't need to do anything to become like God. I am already like God. No, think about it. Let's just take a moment. Nomvula, give me 20 euros so you can become like you. But imagine if you believed that and you gave me that money and you thought that there is something I could do to make you become you. When will that rat race end? You'll go everywhere looking for what you have and who you are. Do you understand? It was like the ultimate deception. Yeah, it's the ultimate scam. The greatest lie ever told. That you are not who you are and you need to do something to become it. Interesting. Imagine someone selling you entry into your own country. Do you know? Like, it's just, it's you. You, no one else can be more you than you. And so if anyone else tries to tell you that you need to do this to become like God, and you fall for that, then you are of all men most miserable. But listen, this has happened to many people over the years and over the generations. This same lie is being told over and over and over and over again. Do you understand? Over again. Anywhere you go, whether in church or not in church, you will hear people selling you to you. Telling you how you can be like who you really are. Do you understand? And so we go everywhere and anywhere only to come back and find that there was nothing. They were selling smoke. Okay? That's that story. For God knows that in the day that you eat of it, your eyes will be open. Okay? And you will be like God, knowing the difference between good and evil and blessing and calamity. So she thought for some reason, I'm missing something. I'm lacking something. There's something I don't have. And I need to get it. And the moment she believed that there is something she doesn't have and she needs to get it, that is what we call, ladies and gentlemen, the fall of humanity. Okay? The moment you're convinced that someone out there has the ability to make you like God, something out there has the ability to restore your true identity, other than what you know and what God gave you, then you are at risk of dangerous deception, as I would like to call it. Dangerous deception. Okay, I don't want to focus too much on that. Let's continue to what happened. In verse 6, it says, and when the woman saw that the tree was good. Listen, this is the same person who was saying that we should not eat or even touch. But immediately the serpent said, no, you will become like God. Her perspectives changed. Do you know? You can have a conversation with someone where you thought you knew what you knew, but after that conversation, your perspective changes. Look, and it says, and when the woman saw that the tree was good, suitable and pleasant for food, and that it was delightful to look at, and that the tree to be desired, and a tree to be desired, listen, in order to make one wise. Why did she eat of the tree? Because she felt it could and had the ability to make her wise, believing that, in fact, she's not wise. Do you understand? See, this is someone who's made in the image and likeness of God. doing something to become wise, that means that she has, as we're about to see, begun or has already lost her sense of self. Because I told you, identity cannot be achieved. You don't achieve your identity. It's only revealed to you that this is who you are, and you accept it. Do you understand? So she believed that, oh man, I'm not like God. I'm not wise. And he says she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband. And he ate. Okay? So they are both deceived. Now, they both feel like they are not like God. They are not wise. Right? And it says here, in verse 7, it says, then the eyes of them were both opened. Now, this part confuses many people because they're like, if their eyes were open, the devil was right. Was it not a good thing? Okay? How many of us are asking this question? If you do something and it opens your eyes, then, like, yeah, of course, God was trying to hide something then, right? Are you not asking these questions? No? Not curious? Okay. Interesting. So it says here, then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, or they became conscious of their nakedness, of the fact that they don't have clothes. And he says, and they sewed fig leaves together. Okay, that's an interesting story. But anyhow, I'm not going to segue into that. They sewed fig leaves together and made themselves apron-like girdles. So they ate the fruit, and then, wow, their eyes were open. They're like, oh man, we're naked. So they took fig leaves and they made something like an apron. Okay? Now listen, verse 8. Very, very interesting. Because we're trying to establish if their eyes were opened, okay? If their eyes were truly opened, then can you explain to me the behavior that happens here? It says in verse 8, and they heard the sound of the Lord walking in the garden in the cool of the day. But the Lord called to Adam and said to him, where are you? Now, sometimes we read this voice as if God is raging mad and he's like, where are you? No. If God is all-knowing, all-powerful, all-present, don't you think he knows where they are? He's not asking a geographical question because he can't find them. He's asking them a question to help them think about their position, their identity. Where are you? Where is the Adam that I made? Where is the woman that I made who knew who they were and would not fall for this kind of thing? He was helping them to think because he knows where they are. You understand? You cannot hide. Right? You see that they now began to exhibit signs of lack of wisdom by thinking that you can hide. So in this conversation, you see that the first thing that they do when they hear the voice of God is they start to run. Much like today. That anytime the name or the concept of God is mentioned, people run in the opposite direction. Okay? So they ran away and they hid themselves. So it says here that it says they heard the sound of the Lord walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves. Why would you hide? If your eyes are open, and if the opening of those eyes was a good thing, why are you running up? Why are you experiencing fear? Why are you experiencing shame? Why are you experiencing guilt? The truth is because not every opening of the eye is a positive thing. And I'll tell you, there are things that people do to open their spiritual eyes. They may not be the best things. They may not be the most wise things because these are perversions. There is one way that our eyes are supposed to be open. And it's not through some of the things that exist out there. And I'll tell you why. In Matthew chapter 6, I didn't put it up there because it's not part of what we're discussing today. But in Matthew chapter 6, verse 20 to 23, you can write it down if you want. But it says, it's Jesus speaking, Matthew 6, 22, 23. It says, the eye is the lamp of the body. Now, listen, when I'm talking about eye and all these things, I'm not talking about your physical eyes, okay? It says that the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is clear, that is spiritually perceptive, your whole body will be full of light, benefiting from God's precepts. In verse 23 it says, but if your eye is bad, that is spiritually blind, it says your whole body will be full of darkness, devoid of God's precepts. It says, so if the very light inside of your inner self, your heart and your conscience is darkness, how great and terrible is that darkness? That there can be a situation where someone has light in them, but that light is actually darkness. Do you understand? And that's what happened to them. Their eyes were opened in that they experienced new knowledge. But not all new knowledge is good knowledge. Not all new knowledge will lead you to discover yourself. Some new knowledge will cause you to lose your very self. Do you understand? I know these things, they exist. The opening of the third eye. Listen, I know these things are there. All I'm saying is be careful where you tread, especially where you're not sure. Just like as you wouldn't walk in unsafe neighborhoods, there are also spiritually unsafe neighborhoods where sometimes we take the chance in a bid to look for ourselves and we end up losing something. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this is what happened. This is one of the first incidences in the scriptures. And it says that, and they heard the sound of the Lord walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord. If they were interacting before this and they were interacting perfectly, why did he feel the need to hide? Do you see, the shame, the guilt, and everything that we experience emotionally as a result of maybe making a mistake is part of the fallen nature. When you make a mistake, you ought to run to God, not to run away from him. You understand? When you make a blunder, you're not supposed to feel like you are unworthy. No. When you make a mistake, the first person you should run to is your Father in heaven, because he's the only person who can fix you. But if you have adopted the way of the world, and every time you make a mistake, you run away, you feel shame, you feel guilty. See, that kind of opening of the eyes will never lead you to discovering or finding yourself. Are we together? I hope we're following up to there, okay? Let me see how far we can go with this. So it says, but the Lord called to Adam and said, where are you? He knew exactly where they were, but they didn't know where they were. They'd lost themselves. They'd lost their sense of self. They'd lost a sense of self-worth. They'd lost their confidence. They'd lost their peace. They'd lost their joy. That's why they're hiding and running away. Do you understand? They were no longer confident in their identity. And let me shock you, their identity did not change. It's their perspective on who they were. For the first time, humanity established an identity outside of God after they believed the lie. Do you understand? Before that, Adam never saw himself as separate. Do you understand? He never saw himself as God being there and me being here. And that's why we read a verse here. It says they became enemies of God in their minds. God never changed, but their perspective of who they were and who God was changed. And so they created an identity outside of who God is. And so it says, where are you? Where are you, Adam? And listen to what Adam says. Tell me if this is the answer of a confident, upright, worthy individual. It says, he said, I heard the sound of you walking in the garden, and I was afraid. Fear. You know how we talked about the opposite of love is not hate. It's what? Fear. Because any time that you feel fear, I can guarantee you that you are not conscious of the presence of God, because the presence of God is love. So you can see the distance. I was afraid. There was no fear in that environment, except after their failed attempt to find themselves in something that was not for them. He says, I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. Why did they need to feel shame before the one who created them? Why? Can you imagine your 6-month-old toddler, when you're bathing them, they go like this? Your baby. You would wonder, what have they seen? Right? What has corrupted their minds to be conscious of this? Do you understand what I'm saying? That there is certain enlightenment that is not really enlightenment. Do you understand what I'm saying? That it makes you sin conscious. It makes you conscious of what's not good and ultimately swallows you up whole. So he says here, I heard the sound of you walking in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. Listen to the questions that are being asked. And he said, who told you you were naked? It's not an angry voice. Listen, do you think he doesn't know who told them? He knows. But he's asking them, what are these voices that are speaking you, telling you that you're not good enough, that you're a failure, that you're not worthy, that you're defeated, that you're not going to... Who told you? Who is telling you these things that you are believing? I know sometimes it's funny how much we've given people power over us. We've allowed people to define who we are. I'm dumb. Or they tell you you're dumb and you take it. Tell you, oh, your forehead is big and you take it. No, because sometimes people develop insecurities out of this, right? They tell you, oh, you're not fun and you take it. They tell you you're boring and you take it. You understand? You allow people to define you and put even negative labels on you, but you don't allow God to tell you who you are and tell you the truth about your real identity. Don't you think that's a bit upside down? Do you understand? You've given strangers and people who have ill will towards you the power. Because sometimes we've experienced things where people have called us names, even though we didn't know them. Those words, they became part of us. They formed our insecurities and shaped our personalities. They don't know us. Do you understand? Just one interaction. But God is telling you every day that you are made in my image and likeness. Who told you that? Who led you to believe that you are not worth your weight in gold? Who told you that? So he's asking them. He wants them to think like, Adam, come on now. I made you in my image and who told you that you're naked? Who told you that you're lacking something? Who told you that there is something missing in you? Is it because now you've become enlightened? Is this the enlightenment that makes you walk in fear and shame? Do you understand? So it says here, who told you that you are naked? And they can't answer. They think that in not responding, they actually answer, but they are not able to reconcile the reason why the question is being asked. Do you understand? They're not able to see beyond these questions. They're looking at them like regular people, and they're getting defensive in trying to justify their actions. So it says here, have you eaten, listen, of the tree which I commanded you that you should not eat? And the man said, listen now, the blame game, right? The woman who you gave to be with me, she gave me fruit from the tree and I ate. He says, and the Lord God said to the woman, what is it you have done? And the woman said, the serpent beguiled, that is cheated. See, at least the woman was conscious enough to recognize the problem, because she says the woman beguiled me, that is the serpent beguiled me, that is he cheated, outwitted and deceived me and I ate. So were their eyes really opened then? if at the end of that passage you hear them admitting that, I was cheated, outwitted, and deceived. Do you understand? The Bible says in, I think, 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 14, it says how the devil masquerades himself as an angel of light. Some of us, if you met this entity called the devil, you would miss him because you think he's standing with a pitchfork and a red face. But that he has no business presenting himself that way because it would be so easy. But sometimes he comes in forms that are very palatable, very enticing. Have you seen the show Lucifer? Yeah, imagine someone like that, someone who you would be like, this one is a blessing from heaven. God has heard my prayer. You would think. The devil is smart enough to know how to pull us in, to draw us with the things that tempt us the most. Let me say that. Okay? Yeah.
But is it your fault then if you believe the devil because you, believe in the good of people and that's a nice person and you're like, yeah, I like to trust people and all that, Like, if there's no hint of this could be wrong because it just feels
Right. Yeah.
How can it be
Your fault, right? Yeah, no, you're right. And sometimes we don't know any better, okay? But there's something called discernment, okay? Many people have not trained themselves to listen to the...
kind of a gut feeling? Or
At the most basic level, yes. But it can be even stronger than just a gut feeling. Do you understand? And sometimes you'll notice what silences what you're calling that gut feeling or discernment is your own desire to be in a particular... Like, you want that person to fulfill a certain need, and you will do anything for that to happen, including suppressing the discernment or the gut feeling or the instinct, like you're calling. You understand what I'm saying? So I believe there's fair chance and enough warning for us to, if we are able to discern that the Lord is leading us. You understand? So, but many times we've not even trained ourselves well enough to know. Do you get what I'm saying? So, yeah, but good question. Thanks. And that one was burning. If Johanna spoke, that was burning. Yeah. And listen, feel free. Listen, you can ask any questions because, yeah, I like us because when you're asking means you're thinking, right? Okay. So this is what happened. Genesis 3. I'm not able to finish everything, but I just want you to see how, for the first time, humanity developed an identity outside of God. Because something somewhere promised them that they can be, or something can make them who God made them to be when they are already who God made them to be. You understand? And so that means that if you really understand who you are, even in the difficult moments and the things that you go through, the breakups, the layoffs, the disappointments, that feeling of losing yourself is an illusion that if you pay attention to, you will actually follow it down a very, very bad rabbit hole. Because remember we said that currency, it maintains its identity. It doesn't matter how bad that note looks because it's being backed up by gold. Its value is immutable. You understand? We said that if Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever, Hebrews 13:18, and it says to us that as he is, so are we in this world. Your value does not change based on your experiences, positive or negative. So you don't actually lose yourself. You only think like they did, that they lost themselves. Because God did not turn his back on them. No. They themselves started hiding and started separating and started feeling the shame and the guilt. Do you understand? Okay? But as you develop and as you begin to understand your worth and your identity and who you are in God, you will not let things pull you away and try to lead you to where you already are. You will not give anyone or anything the privilege of telling you what you already know. Because there is no one who can define you better than the one who put you on this earth and gave you breath. Do you understand? No one can give you a definition. You can ask anyone, tell me who am I? No one has that answer. Except the one who made you. He is the only one who knows why you're here, why you exist, and why you exist at this point in time. Do you understand? There is a reason why you are in this generation and not in that generation. And that's why it says, don't ask questions like, the good old days are better than today. It says, because it's not from wisdom that you ask this. Ask yourself and ask God rather in conversation. Tell him to tell you who you are. Do you understand? It will save you time. In some instances, it will save you money. It will save you heartache. It will save you distress. Because things out there, it's like they're trying to rob you of that sense of self. Okay. Let's go. So the divine exchange. What solutions do the scriptures offer? Because we talked about mirrors, right? And we saw how that if you want to know who you are, physically, in a physical sense, if you want to know who you are, where do you look? Mirror. We also said that depending on what kind of mirror you look at, the image that you see will inform the perception that you have of yourself, right? I'm not going to go through everything, but if you look at a broken mirror, what are you going to see? Broken person. Are you broken?
No.
Maybe a little bit.
So
I'm just kidding, right? But in your identity, you're not broken. You understand? When you look at, we talked about the concave, all these mirrors, that what you look at to inform your sense of identity matters a lot. You can't look at anything. Just like you can't let anything open your eyes. Just like you can't turn to anyone. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I love what the scriptures say here in Isaiah 61, verse 1 to 7, speaking of Jesus prophetically, about the work that he came to do in restoring our identity, who we are, in giving us back what we lost in the process of finding ourselves. Okay? So it says this is my conclusion. I think I did well on time, right? Guys, clap for me.
I'll take the blame. I went to time myself.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, it's Tunji's fault.
I'll take it this week.
And let me tell you, we just started this series, so we'll be covering a lot more areas like identity crisis, okay? And other things that touch on identity. It's such a wide subject, but I feel like it's very, very important. So I encourage you, if you didn't watch last week's, make sure you watch it. Piece it together with this.
Really good.
And we'll continue to lay down this foundation. Because once you know who you are, once you know where you are, there is nothing in this life that will shake you so bad that you can never get up. You understand? Because your identity is intact. It's solid. It doesn't shake. Yeah? So, Isaiah 61, 1 to 7. I love this. It says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because the Lord has anointed me to preach good tidings to the poor. He sent me to heal. Now, look at the juxtapositions. Because if you feel like any one of this is you, then there is a solution for whatever you experienced or experiencing, or whatever you've lost, or whatever you feel like is missing. I believe it exists in the scriptures. It says that he has sent me to heal the brokenhearted. See, I like, it's interesting. I like how the Bible just doesn't talk about, physical healing, very important, but even broken hearts. You understand? Sometimes we've gone through experiences that have really crushed us. But he said that he came to heal the brokenhearted. The experiences that caused your heart to break such that you felt like you lost yourself. You felt like you're irreparable. You felt like now you've become, you've become hard-hearted because of what you've experienced. But he says here that he has sent me to heal the brokenhearted. He says to proclaim liberty to captives There are people who are bound in addictions and things that are limiting them from moving forward. But he said, I have come to proclaim liberty, freedom. He says, he who the Son sets free is free indeed. And he says, it is for freedom that you have been set free. In other words, you've been set free so that you can actually be free. You are not set free so that you can continue in the same things that you are bound to. See that? And he says, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound. He says, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our God. And he says, to comfort all who mourn. So if you're mourning, there's comfort. To console those who mourn in Zion. And I love this one. He says to give them what? Beauty for ashes. Where you were burned, where you lost something, where things didn't work out the way you intended. He says he's giving you beauty for ashes. No one will see those scars. No one will see those burn marks. He's exchanging. You see, he's not selling and he's not asking you to do something so he can take it away. No. He's just trading in. I'm trading my sickness. I'm trading my shame. To give beauty for ashes. And he says the oil of joy for mourning. And the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. If you're struggling with a heavy spirit, you're always feeling down, you don't know what's bothering you, it's not this, it's not that. He says to give you a spirit of praise. That means you'll be able to rejoice once again. And he says that they may be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he may be glorified. And he says, and they shall rebuild the old ruins, the things that were destroyed, the sense of self that you lost, the identity that you don't think you have, the dreams that you thought you lost. He says you will rebuild the old ruins. You'll be able to dream again. You'll be able to hope again. You'll be able to believe again. And he says they shall raise up the former desolations and they shall repair the ruined cities and the desolations of many generations. That what God is doing in your life is not just going to be for you, but also for those who come after you, your children and their children. That is fixing things generationally. You know, there's a message out there that's so focused on generational curses. But it's not listed here. He said he's coming to restore the desolation of generations. He's fixing things for you, for posterity, for the future. You understand? And he says, instead of your shame, you will have double honor. You know, I like that because shame, honor cancel out, right? You had shame, now it gives you honor, great. But he says, give you double honor. That means even honor that you did not deserve. You understand? You did something shameful, and instead of you getting the shame that comes with it, he says he'll take away the shame and give you double honor. Instead of confusion, they rejoice in their portion. I love it. It covers everything. No more confusion. No more like, where am I going? What does this life have to offer me? I feel stuck. Who told you that? He says he'll take away the confusion. He'll take away the shame. And he says, therefore in their land they shall possess double everything. And he says, everlasting joy shall be theirs. Your true identity can be found in no other than God. You can look for it, you can try and find it, but it doesn't exist anywhere else except where you came from. You understand? So as you have felt that you've lost yourself, the answer is not to go out and look for yourself. The answer is to go in. Speak with him. Let him have the pain and the brokenness and the shame, and he'll exchange it for all these things that he's listed for us here. Amen? Amen.